Hello and welcome to the Film Ireland podcast. I'm Gemma. I'm chatting with producers Kathryn Lennon and James Mitchell about season 2 of Hidden Assets, which will be on RT1 and RT Player this Sunday, the 3rd of September at 9:30. Thank you so much for chatting with us. It's very exciting to have a new season of Hidden Assets out. Oh my God, I'd say there's drama, twists, turns, emotional intensity, workplace tension, that romantic tension. Like it's a great dramatic watch. I got to watch it for this and it was very it was a real treat. So I was like, oh God, it's nice to see it's going in that direction. So you're kind of upping the stakes and then following some of these characters that we've gotten to know and love. So I'll kind of get into the bits around it actually and get into the nitty gritty. But first I'd love to know a little bit about your backgrounds on this project. Like something of such a big scope must be really hard to get off the ground.
Yes, I think correct, James. Well, I'll so quickly and then I'll let James speak. So Saffron Pictures is a company which is myself and Siobhan Burke, and James Mitchell has a company called Soho Moon, and we joined forces in 2015, James?
Yes.
Yes. So I suppose it was trying to, I mean, we're a small outfit. James has had a huge past and very accomplished, and we came together in an effort to try and, I suppose, bring both our strengths to the table to try and actually get some international drama going, because as everybody knows, the landscape of actually making TV drama has become really difficult and continues to be, because you're competing with the streamers, and we were trying to make Irish-led Irish IP work. And so we came together and we started, the first thing that we made together was Acceptable Risk, which went out in 2016. And that was our first foray on an international co-production.
Fabulous.
So James kind of masterminded the elements of actually financing a show. So I should let James do the talking of that.
Well, I don't know if there's that much masterminding involved, but I don't know. As you'd have gathered, I am not in fact Irish. I'm English, but I've been working in Ireland or with Ireland for a very long time, decades, in fact. And I don't know. It's always seemed to me to be kind of self-evident that if you're trying to make Irish drama, you've got a pool of extraordinary talent to draw on. You've got writers, you've got directors, you've got actors. I mean, it's amazing for actually a very small population. But that same small population means that you've got a public broadcaster in a very, very small market, and there just isn't the money available to actually make big drama shows. I mean, even before the streamers ever came on the scene. So I don't know, it's always been self-evident to me, but then maybe it's easy to say if one is kind of an outsider, that if you want to make Irish drama, I mean, yes, of course you pull together the Irish elements and so on, and you need an Irish anchor, which in our case has been RTE supported by Screen Ireland, but that's never going to get you anywhere near financed. So you have to think internationally from the beginning. I mean, before you're developing this thing, rather than after you've got a set of scripts. And so, as I say, it seems quite simple, but I'm not sure why more people aren't doing it. But anyway, that's basically what we've done.
So is this something that you guys like creatively produced? Would you guys have gone to the creator and said, like, look, we're thinking about doing something, is there anything in your back pocket? Like, how do you guys pool together the talent, first of all, to even put together a pitch for funding?
Well, we knew that we wanted to work in the thriller genre, And Siobhan Burke, our other partner, actually came up with a rather brilliant notion, which was to build a thriller series around cab, which nobody had done. And so what you get with cab is it is actually uniquely and distinctively Irish. And it is, in a sense, police procedural, but it's not actually part of the police because you've got civilian members of cab as well. So it's actually almost a perfect mix. It's just a brilliant wheeze to use cab. And then this has been part of the DNA of Kate and Siobhan in particular, is to actually use a researcher, Sheila Ahern in this case, to actually research cab and get to know some people in cab, so that we're not making a documentary, but we are making something that tries to be plausible. And cab turns out to be fascinating. So it's proved to be a great vehicle.
I love that it organically touches the higher level drug dealers, the politics behind everything, and then the financing. And like, I think in a way, you were talking about all the Irish talent. There's a lot of kind of international infamous Irish criminal talent out there who are operating on such a grand scale that it really authentically justifies that truthfulness of going, oh, well, maybe, there could be some very shady Irish people at the top. And again, like, I think it plays into that. Did you guys know specifically you were going to sort of go to Antwerp? Was that something that you guys maybe felt around first to see where would be the natural partner? Because I know there's like co-production funds and various different things. Do you guys find a maybe like a team of like another company that you like to work with across in like as that co-production model? Like, I'd be always interested to see how that might play out.
Well, I don't know. I mean, over the years, I've done a lot of international co-production in a lot of different countries. But as it happens, and it is pure chance, the place that I live in France is actually Lille, which is in northern France, and is actually 10, 15 minutes from the Belgian border. So I've actually watched the Belgian industry develop around their tax shelter funding opportunities and put a small toe in the water. I did a drama documentary a few years back for RTE called Citizen Lane, about Hugh Lane, the founder of the Hugh Lane Gallery and so on. And we did the post-production in Brussels, really as an exercise to try out whether the Belgian financing setup works. And I'm happy to say it does. So that's how the Belgian connection came about. I don't know, Antwerp is just a place that's worth visiting. I don't know if you've ever been, but it's an amazing city.
It is an amazing city, yeah. And I suppose part of the process, James, too, was, we brought the fab Peter McKenna in as part of the writing team, and Peter and Siobhan are both very keen, as we all are, on trying to give opportunities to new writers, because it's a difficult landscape in Ireland for writers to actually get their toe in the door and be part of drama scripting. And so I guess James is right. We identified Antwerp, and then we realized actually it's an international port, and that gave us loads of story ideas. And James and Peter went to Antwerp, and that really influenced what was possible dramatically in terms of the writing. And then in kind of parallel, we went on a trip to Belgium, you and I, James, and we started meeting with production companies over there. And in the end, we were introduced to Potemkino, our Belgian co-producing partners, and we started our relationship with them. So I mean, it's from the so you've got the creative process going on the one hand, and then we like to think, James, we have our own little creativity going on the back end, which basically is hours and hours with movie magic budgeting, trying to actually make sums work. And personally, for me now, a big learning curve, because we have a very long financing plan. We had co-produced the first series we did together with Canadian partners called Facet 4 based in Montreal, and we did our post-production in Montreal. So we were now in a world of 3 territories. So you get into an Irish, Belgian, Canadian co-production, and then it's like, okay, so how does this work? And then you're into applications to Screen Ireland and Telefilm in Canada regarding getting your treaty up and running, and you're working with 2 sets or 3 sets of figures, Ireland and Belgium and Canada, and trying to drag them all in together into one document. And each territory then has, it's almost like, am I allowed to say this? James will stop me if I'm wrong. It's almost like not sub-financing, but you're looking to the finance available in each of those territories. So in the same way that traditionally in Ireland, you look to the broadcaster and obviously Screen Ireland, who are really supportive, and your tax. Similarly, Belgium has a Screen Flanders and the tax and broadcasters, and you're looking at tax deals in Canada and broadcasters. So suddenly you have, will I dare to guess how many moving parts in your evolving? And then, I read a draft of a script and I go, absolutely no way. Cut that right back. We can't afford to do this, or, but we've been very fortunate that we have great partnerships with both Potemkino and Facet 4. And I guess one of the nice things is on a second season, when you're working with the same people, there's a shorthand. So you already have the relationships, and that kind of is a pleasure, because it does really help, And then in Ireland, we chose to set ourselves in a fictitious cab office in Limerick. So we were engaged with, filming in the regions, and obviously we made the first season during COVID, which was another nice, just in case you didn't have enough going on in your brain. And restrictions, COVID restrictions, and the different restrictions in each country, and trying to move people around, and mandatory hotel quarantining, yada yada yada. So we went back to Limerick this time, and it's kind of interesting, isn't it, James? I suppose we clearly wanted, and believed in trying to not have everything Dublin centric, and we felt that it gave us a kind of a new look on Ireland in terms of dramatically, and our characters. Not that I'm saying Dublin isn't fantastic, but everything is sort of set, or a lot of things are set in Dublin. And we did ably try to get our regional uplift, because you are entitled to it under Section 481, although I think that's finishing this year. But it just it's really difficult. It's another obstacle in terms of trying to make things in the region, because in theory, it should be, it should all work really easily, and then you get boots on the ground, and suddenly, if there's another production running in the region that you're in, all the crew are gone, and then you're literally trying to bring people. And actually, in our instance, a lot of the Limerick-based or that region-based people, some who we'd worked with previously, they'd basically all relocated to Bray, because that's where the most continuous work is, and you realize that, if there isn't a show happening in the studios in Limerick, well, then people can't continue in the industry down there, because there just isn't the work. But actually, and again, we'd have to say Screen Ireland were really supportive, because they're big believers in the regions, and they have this new fund, and we applied to it, and that really helped us in trying to make all of that
And I
work.
know as well, it's film in Limerick. They're trying to train people up specifically in that field, but it's sort of like by the time you realize there's a deficit in a field, it's nearly too late. You know, like your production can't wait around for someone to like be trained up in a specific field or task that it's sort of. And then as well, like you train someone up, and then they're like, all right, well, I'm going to go to Dublin where I can work continuously because there's such a deficit. And did you guys feel maybe there was a bit of a kind of shift? Because I know for a while it was near impossible to get crew and casting, but I'm wondering if you're doing on something on such a big scale, and did maybe it wasn't affected by it yet, but it's been 100 days. I'm just wondering, has the strike made a difference? Has it freed up crew to work on your projects? Is like, did it just not fall in that time?
It wasn't in our timeline, so we filmed from March until June was our shooting period. So we were way before any of that. So I don't know, actually. I mean, I believe that there are derogations for a lot of, or some projects have are staying going for that reason. So I don't know. I mean, I don't. To be honest with you, we had, this was a very tight timeline in terms of delivery, because we're going out on September 3rd, and we finished our shoot in Antwerp on June 10th.
Wow.
So to actually turn around our post, I haven't really been in touch with what's going on, and I'm just like heads down in terms of other projects. But I will say, as it is difficult to compete with the monies that are paid to crew from the streamers. And historically, back in the day, there was sort of an indigenous sort of world going on, and then there was the big projects that came in, but the gap has really diminished. And what you find is people, they're going to choose the big shows, because it's economics where people are concerned. It's like, if I can get a better rate and a longer gig, sorry, not available.
Yeah.
Which in turn, I guess, does help the upward movement of crew, but it's a delicate balance.
And something on such a big scale, you can imagine how those, like, even smaller, like very regional, very kind of lower budget things are really struggling to find people for specific crew roles, like let alone like short film schemes. You're like, oh my God.
I can imagine. Yeah. I mean, I do think that it is great, all the training initiatives that are going on, and but I suppose, it's I think it's kind of based on inward projects. The industry seems to be, if they stopped, what would we be left with indigenous work?
Yeah. And that, I suppose it's like you guys are creating such an interesting world by bringing that link to Belgium in, by, like kind of, and Canada as well. Like you are kind of creating more of that kind of like focus, because again, like, I mean, how many territories does Hidden Assets sell to?
Well, I don't know, I haven't counted, but quite a lot. So it sells to the US, obviously it sells to Canada and to Belgium, it sells to the UK, the BBC has acquired it, the UK. It sells to Spain, Portugal, France. Actually, curious enough, it sells pretty much most places other than actually chunks of continental Europe. I mean, there's no sale in Germany or anywhere in the Scandinavian countries. I can't explain why, but that's kind of the way it is. But going back to what Kate was saying there, and what you were talking about, this business about inward investment in Ireland is obviously, in overall economic terms, for Ireland and for the Irish film industry, is really good news. And training people is a good idea, and the regions, all of these are really good ideas, and it's hard to argue with any of them. But there is an underlying issue, which Kate was touching on there, which is the inward investment that is coming from the big streamers. for example, is not coming out of sentiment, and it's not because they're all Irish Americans or something. They're coming here for economic reasons. And the danger, I think, becomes, first of all, that prices in Ireland have rocketed. I don't just mean general inflation. I mean, the inflation within this industry here is enormous. And at the same time, what you've actually got is the streamers all cutting back in a big way because they've all overspent. I mean, they're not making any profits. I mean, they're adding subscribers, but they're not actually making profits. So you run a risk, which is that you will have all of these trained people and you'll have all of this infrastructure and so on. But I don't know, Netflix and Apple and people are, as I say, they're not going to be coming here out of loyalty or something. And I'm not quite sure what you do in that, other than to say the indigenous industry needs to be boosted and supported as much as possible. Because ultimately, I think, for the future of the industry, Ireland has to create it and own its own IP.
Yeah, I know completely. And you do feel the shows that have really kind of made the mark, like this is one of them, but there's been, like, compared to years past, seems to be fewer and fewer like really local shows, and the shows that are Irish that are doing well are actually from the UK. Like Derry Girls and the Young Offenders, like they're UK shows that are made by Irish people, and you're like, oh, okay. So you do sort of feel that there isn't, like gone are the days where there'd be like a standout drama always on that you'd catch, where now it's like, oh, and I suppose maybe that's the nature of how we're filtering and receiving our shows. Do you know, like if I'm not on the player, maybe I'm not going to have a show advertised to me that I might like. And that's the thing where, like if my parents were watching TV back in the day, like maybe I'd sit in on an ad and go, oh yeah, I'll make an effort to see that, So I don't know, like maybe like things are definitely changing. I think it's as much a distribution issue, because like where are people getting their content? And it doesn't seem to be in those traditional ways for those types of shows as well. Like I'm just curious too. So you guys will go on broadcasters. Would you then do a streaming run at the end? Like, would it be worth your while to find that, or to get those audiences once it's kind of done its run?
Well, we have a mix, which is, I mean, Acorn, which is one of our primary funders, is in fact a streaming service. But I suppose, I mean, I don't know, recognizing one's market. I mean, yes, if you're talking to broadcasters, and this is not just Irish broadcasters, it's true, at least in my experience, all public broadcasters will always say the same thing to you, which is that they're very keen to make shows which appeal to, I don't know, a demographic of people aged 18 to 35 or something. And you say, those people aren't watching television. They literally do not watch TV. So it's not even aspirational. It's actually delusional to think that you are, appealing to that audience. And it is a fact that if you take, for example, BBC One in the UK, the average age of the BBC One audience is 61. And RTE1, I can't give you chapter and verse, but it won't be very different. So one needs to bear in mind, and we try, that probably we are making shows for a somewhat older audience, and where that has has a bearing is particularly in the pacing of shows, which I don't know, you can take fantastic shows like, I don't know, Breaking Bad or whatever it is. I don't think the average person over 50 is able to understand what is going on. It's a pace.
Yeah, I mean, I do think, and I think RTE, the player has become a better interface. I mean, in its early time, it used to drive me crazy because it would crash, and you know, you'd be in the endless loop of ads again and you couldn't manipulate it. But I do think that has been, certainly I'm delighted to see, and they're making a bigger effort. And, you know, as someone living in the Midlands, I use Sky as my interface, and now I have an icon, which is the RT player. So it's just that has really helped, because I know, I mean, I've kids in their 20s. They never watch conventional television. They binge watch. They, you know, it's either, and they, you know, Netflix, shared passwords, Disney Plus, Amazon. I mean, there's such a, where do you go to? The choices, like, you know, legion, and then it's actually trying to find your way through it. So I don't know. I mean, I suppose the landscape has all changed. Everybody's playing catch up. You know, the traditional model of the ads being on the telly, and that's all changed. It's now dissipated into Facebook and, you know, yada 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 yada. And so yeah, and I suppose what we're about is trying to actually make Irish IP owned work, which, you know, we can make, which we're in control of, which we can then disseminate across the world. And yeah, and we hope to continue doing it.
And it is a very exciting show. You were saying about pace. I'm like, I love the pace. It's very you know, like full of twists and turns. There's lovely little reveals. There's, you know, like there's just the right amount of kind of character development that is happening as the plot is progressing from A to B to C. So it's lovely. It's lovely to
well,
catch that.
We were really, really fortunate. I mean, we've fabulous bunch of writers, you know, and working with Peter McKenna and our story producer Vicky Owens and Siobhan, like cracking team. And then I have to say, incredible crews here, guys. I mean, hats off to every department in Ireland, right down to trainees. We had such an amazing bunch of people working with us in Limerick, and the Limerick Film Office, really supportive. Everybody really, you know, working hard for us. And then, you know, we did bring some crew for periods to Antwerp, and then we had an amazing crew in Antwerp. And we've been really fortunate, you know, and we, Caddy Sullivan and our Kadir Barati Balchi, amazing directors, and our editors. I mean, we have been really, and I don't say this in a schmaltzy way, but we've been very lucky with the team on this particular show. And I think we have actually probably are punching above our budget in terms of what we've achieved. And that's thanks to, you know, the creativity and all of the hard work. Loads of hard work, you know.
And it's up there with those kind of American like Criminal Minds, you know, like all these kind of like crime fighter people, you know, in a room. You've their quirky little behaviors, their glitches with one another, and it really sets nice. And then you have the two sort of different cultures, your two leads. So chat to me about season 2. It's different. We have slightly different cast, a different, you know, we're following sort of our antagonist from the get-go, which is really exciting. Just tell me a little bit about sort of where you guys were thinking of mixing it up in this from the last one, like as from a producer's point of view. Like, did you guys know, is this, you know, like, is that these are the elements that worked, so you want to lean in more to them?
Yes, and one has also got to do things like restraining one or two of our creatives who are, I would say, trigger happy, in terms of being, you know, absolutely ready to kill off anybody. This is a producer's nightmare. That, you know, you suddenly read an outline and find that actually 3 people whom we have invested a lot of time and money in are actually now dead. This is not helpful. But also in the reality, for example, of CAB, and this is part of our research, people actually don't stay very long in CAB. It's seen as a stepping stone, particularly if you're successful. It's seen as a stepping stone to higher things in your Garda career or whatever. So, for example, the lead character we had in season 1, having had such a success with season 1, and getting her man, as it were, or getting her woman, and so on, would in fact in Cab move on to higher things within the Gardaí. But yeah, we knew we wanted to conclude that story. There were still things open at the end of season 1. And by the way, we have exactly the same kind of issues now because we are developing season 3. And we've kind of told the story of seasons 1 and 2, but this team is going to go on now, on to their next case. So that's kind of the current work that's going on.
Or I don't want to give too much away, but let's say their next case moved on to them in the beginning, and people can find out on the 2nd of September. But yeah, like it's sort of, and that again, like it's a nice plot point because everything in this feels truthful. Like it feels like, like it's not this like over the top heightened thing where someone, drives a motorbike over a helicopter with a ramp or something like that. Like, I mean, all these things are things, if you work in like a business or an organization, like these elements are things that feel truthful and realistic and not like sensationalist.
Yeah.
Well, yes, one hopes that it is underpinned by reality, and to some extent, though, one actually opens up a newspaper or whatever, if one's still in the business. I happen to like physically reading newspapers. And finding that actually, particularly Irish crime is not only keeping pace with us, but actually is ahead of us in some respects.
Season 4 sorted.
Yeah,
Yes.
these people are really moving around. Whether it's Spain or Dubai or wherever else it is, they're everywhere.
Yes, they're definitely international.
And very interesting because you guys are dealing with 3 separate entities with regards funding, presumably that already have a stake bought in for their regional broadcasting. And then you guys are manning the creatives, the directors. How, like, when do you guys step in? Do you guys like leave people to be? Do you guys like to kind of like dip in and out of the creative process? Do you guys kind of let the funders have their notes? Or like I'm very curious to see how all this is sort of managed, like project managed on a day-to-day basis, because it's a lot of, like you said earlier, of moving parts.
Yeah. Well, Siobhan, our partner, we would have to, she wish she was on the session here now so she could take a bow. I mean, she does an extraordinary job in the management creatively of all of our partners. And I suppose we're very collaborative as a team, and we would be we would be across, we would be there. I mean, boots on the ground every day they shoot, and post the COVID world, I suppose, created extraordinary new abilities. Where you don't actually have to be in the territory. You can get cuts and be live for ADR, and in Ireland, although. We did go to Montreal for part of post, to be there. So it's pretty full on. Wouldn't you agree, James? It
helps though. I mean, we are collaborative, but it does help that we come from 3 different backgrounds as a team. Siobhan comes from, I suppose, what one would say is largely a theatre background, and therefore feels, I think, probably very comfortable in the area of dealing with writers and directors and actors and so on. And Kate comes from more of a production background, and I, for my sins, a long time ago, was a lawyer. So in terms of structuring and treaties and making companies fit together is something that I'm quite familiar with. So we do bring different skills to the party.
Does that mean you're a free legal consultant when it comes to people pitching story ideas that veer into that legal realm?
Not really well. I mean, I wouldn't claim to be a useful legal person. I'm not up to date currently. I mean, we employ lawyers. It's the useful thing is possibly that one actually knows the questions to ask and what to expect of those lawyers. So yeah, I don't actually do any legal work as such, but I get to deal with the lawyers, particularly in Ireland and Canada, because these are both jurisdictions which are based very much on English common law, and where there is this extraordinarily excessive amount of legal work that goes on around film and television production. I mean, continental Europeans are always absolutely amazed by the amount of legal work and the scale of legal fees that get incurred on any project. They do contracts on one side of a piece of paper. We do contracts that run into hundreds of pages.
That sounds expensive, very expensive.
Yeah.
And I'm just very interested to how that collaborative process works. So if do you guys say, chat with Peter, go, this is the idea for the season. This is, where this seemed to work really well the last time. This is the feedback from the last season. Let's, and then let him go off and come back to you with like a full episode outline and treatment, and then he fields it out to his writers. Like, how does that integrate? And then at what point does the funders kind of sign off on that as well?
Well, that process all happens, but it all happens as a result of the first step. In fact, is the creation of a writer's room. So there's a story room in which, yes, Peter McKenna is there, but so is Vicky Owens, our story producer. So are the writers, the shadow writers whom we employ, the writers whom we're trying to bring on. So I mean, it's quite a big room, actually. And from our side, it's pretty much, I mean, it's not exclusively Siobhan Burke, but it's largely Siobhan on the producing side who's in that room. And that's a week's worth of them just kicking around exactly the questions you've just asked, and going away and coming up with an outline. And yes, there is then again, a collaborative process with not all of our funders, but our 2 or 3 key funders, and getting their input and their reaction, and is this something they're going to be comfortable with, and so on. And when that has got a shape, and there are outlines, I mean, yes, then writers start writing.
And would there be any, like, you don't have to go into specifics, but just like if someone is like, in Antwerp, we don't like that reflects badly on our politics and we'd prefer not to have that in, like, would they be notes, and I'm not saying specifically about that, but would they be notes that you guys might get where you're like, actually, we feel culturally this isn't appropriate, or is it more like, would you get notes where I don't think that character would do that at this point, or this doesn't feel truthful, or would they be quite hands-off?
No, they're quite hands-on. I don't think we've ever had anybody actually say, we don't like the way you're portraying our city or our place or whatever. But we do actually encourage, particularly because none of us is Belgian, none of us speaks Flemish, and they have a very specific culture, even if it's only defined by not being French. So yeah, we actually want to hear from them about that. Just wouldn't happen. But what we expect please more constructive notes than that. What would happen?
That's okay. That's great. So they're the free story consultants then. You say
yes.
books.
The only thing, I mean, I can tell you is I don't think that we are that popular in the city of Antwerp. The city of Antwerp has an annual sort of bursary, or whatever you want to call it, prize that it's not very big. It's about 50,000 euros that they hand out once a year to one production, for having portrayed Antwerp in a way that the city fathers of Antwerp regard as being positive and so on. So we applied for this, we didn't get it. So I'm not sure we're that popular in Antwerp.
And like, is that if you're an ongoing season? Like, what if your thing is concluded? You just get to keep that money and have a big party for your cast and crew.
I guess. I think it's probably somebody on Antwerp City Council who thought that, part of their promotional marketing budget, whatever. I mean, Antwerp is one rich city, by the way. It is the second biggest port in Europe. It has become, coincidentally, our story is not about drugs, but actually Antwerp is now the leading port of entry into Europe for cocaine.
Oh, wow, it was Amsterdam for a long time, wasn't it? It was, yeah.
It comes in on these fruit ships coming in from South America. And the other sort of curious bit of information one picks up along the way is that for a long time, apparently cocaine goes through your system. So it's possible to actually measure consumption in a city by analyzing wastewater and so on. So London was the city with the biggest per capita usage of cocaine for a long time. But it has been overtaken by Antwerp. So they're not only importing the stuff, they're using it.
Is there any sort of themes that you guys can see on the horizon that maybe you'd like to bring into future seasons? Or is that a secret that we're not announcing?
We are, but I'm not sure that we're ready to talk about them.
Yeah.
But I mean, I would say broadly, though, that one of the things, I mean, CAB gets a lot of press coverage, obviously, in Ireland for what I would call fairly routine things. I mean, the sort of typical small-time thing that goes on is, I know, some small-time drug dealer in Dublin gets himself a new Rolex or something. The first thing he does is he goes on Facebook and says, "Look at my new Rolex." The next thing is CAB, visits him following day. There's a lot of that goes on, but I think increasingly what is happening with CAB is that CAB has become interested in white-collar crime, which is what particularly interested us, because it's almost, one couldn't really say there's a culture of white-collar criminals getting away with it necessarily, but there is a sort of...
But there is, though, like Anglo, they were let go at everything. There's no one is held accountable for anything.
Right, but I think there is also sort of popular sense, misconception, basically, of saying that white-collar crime doesn't have victims, because there are no immediately apparent victims. But there are, in fact, massive consequences to white-collar crime. And I don't know, speaking again as an outsider, part of the difficulty here may simply be because this is a small country. And I don't know, the lawyers and the accountants who are involved in this kind of thing or who facilitate this kind of thing, they're your neighbors or you went to school with them. And it's very difficult to put your neighbor in jail or to lock them up or whatever. But,
or they have dirt on you. That's another thing.
Well,
no one is clean. I think that's why a lot of people get away with things. That's my theory anyway, where people have dirt on other people. And like part of it is, either there's fiscal things at stake, but it's like,
or they leveraging information.
And this is what's nice about that. It's the season 1, especially when you see how all the tendrils are linked. It's true, like, again, like, nothing is too sensationalist, nothing is too convenient. It all feels very grounded in a sort of like depressing logic where this is how the world is, and like, the people at the bottom are the people like getting kind of killed off at the very beginning and throughout for no other reason than to forward the agenda of the people at the top, and that's again why it's thematically so relevant. And I'm looking forward now to seeing how season 2 plays out. What has the response be to season 1 actually, since you guys have seen it? Has it gone down differently in different territories? Has it been popular in a place maybe we wouldn't expect?
No, I mean, it seems to have been uniformly good.
Well received.
I think in the UK, where it went out on BBC 4, there was that, and I say this as an English person, there was that typical English condescending thing, and quite a lot of the kind of commentary on Twitter was, gosh, this is amazing. It's an Irish show, and it's really rather good. It's kind of,
I mean, that was a big boost for us that actually the BBC acquired it, and it did really well. And that was nice to see. No, I think by and large we were actually very well pleased, and obviously our funders were, because they all came in for a second season, and we'll be hoping to put together another interesting finance plan for season 3. And yeah.
Any new locations? You don't have to name them, but like any new faces?
Well, I don't know about faces, but I think there is a sense that we need to get our atlases out, because I don't think we're sort of tired and fed up, particularly with Belgium, but I think it may be time for us to move on. And actually, rather helpfully, all the research with CAB actually indicates that CAB has kind of gone global, basically. So it's quite useful for us.
It's a really exciting show. It was a real joy to watch, and I can't wait now for season 2. I would actually sit here and ask you questions all day because there's so much I want to know, but I will let you guys go because you have so much to do, and thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thank you very much.
You're so welcome.